The Leaf by Oscar, Sumatra. A wonderful blend of Nicaragua, Dominican, and I believe Honduran leaf. Emmett's smoking a Arturo Fuente Chateau Natural, his favorite. And half of that is true, and half of that's just crap I made up. So welcome to another Anarcho Sagas video. A special one with a special guest, who I think you've seen a lot of before.
This isn't my favorite cigar. I looked in his humidor and I said, give me the cheapest one. So we didn't have anything specific to talk about. We just wanted to film for whatever reason.
Yeah, we just wanted to film. We're actually putting off filming the Let's Play right now.
And right after this, we're going to film the Let's Play, maybe.
But Emmett said he might want to talk about music.
Yeah.
Which is something we both know about, but something he knows more about.
I've been wanting to put together, or just do a video on my channel about, I don't know, lots of things concerning music, but now that Max is sort of doing this series, it seems more reasonable to put it on his channel.
It's a good venue for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with those, and I like those because they're a nice mild blend, but they burn unevenly, and you can tell because it should all be white ash on the tip of your cigar after you smoked a certain portion of it. That means it's burning thoroughly. But with this, you'll see parts of it have black, just like black charred tobacco, that it's not, and so like you'll get an inch of burn on this side, and this side will be an inch higher.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it's a nice cigar, but I don't like the uneven burn. That's the only problem. How are we going to segue into music from that? An uneven burn, much like the uneven time signatures of Dave Brubeck's.
Yeah, no, it was actually, I had a communications teacher for like, it was just like a speech class, how to give speeches and stuff, and she was like obviously one of these teachers that had been on tenure, and she didn't really have any new information to give past like the early 2000s when she's, you know, I don't know, she's one of those guys you can tell she has just this set of information that she regurgitates.
Yeah.
She thinks she's really wise, even if some of it's like,
it's like really practiced.
Yeah. And she was talking about different, there was that study, I forget who did it, but different kinds of brains.
There's so
like,
many.
I know, yeah. But there
it was arbitrary categories for like.
Right, yeah. It was kind of, you could tell it was kind of a bullshit one, because I mean it wasn't just like creative and technical or whatever. There were like 5 of them.
It's probably something she saw a friend share on Facebook who was less educated than her.
But and one of them was literally just called the music brain. And I thought that was such a dumb, like inaccurate oversimplification of whatever they were going for. But it did get me thinking about, you know, people who are in music and the different types of people who are in music. There's not just like a music person that decides to be in music. That's obviously insane.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
But
your son was born with a music brain, clearly.
But yeah, it's interesting because I've met musicians, a lot of musicians that are either, they're great at like sight reading. They definitely have a very, I would say, like a mathematical brain, because they can put the you know, the sight and the hands together very quickly, and I'm bad at that. I have to like sit down with a piece of music. If I have to read it, it takes me a while to really get it into my hands. But with them, they can really get into it pretty quickly and figure it out. And then when you want to like improv with them or do something on the creative side, they're kind of like afraid and don't know what to do. And so there is technical, and then there is creative within music. But it's also it goes deeper than that, because I've noticed that a lot of jazz musicians are sort of on the technical side too. Even that, you know, you think of jazz as being a very expressive art form, but it's also one of the most technical art forms, and I've been seeing more of that, and I've been noticing that a lot of jazz musicians are kind of competitive, and they like the sort of overly technical nature of it.
But they have to improvise.
Right,
so.
they have to improvise, but even the improvisation is very technical. Like, they learn all these crazy different kinds of scales, like super Locrian and all that crazy stuff. And it's weird, it's weird to look at how music affects people differently. And I have a friend who plays saxophone. He's a really good saxophonist, and even he's a great example because he was previously an engineer major, so obviously that's where his mind is at. and he loves stuff that you really have to like listen to and try and figure out, whether it be like, you know, time signatures being weird or, you know, weird scales or whatever. And if you guys have seen my video Modern Musicians, you know, I kind of bag on that.
Kind of.
Yeah, I really do. But the more that I've been taking like jazz band and been around jazz musicians, I accept that they can appreciate that and are interested in that. To me, it's always been like a question of, you know, are you doing this just for the sake of being technical and difficult,
Right.
or does it really serve the music? But I guess, you know, the idea of the music is different for everyone. And for me, and maybe for you too, it's always been like emotional expression. I don't try to be overtly technical unless that feels right.
Right.
Which is kind of dumb, I guess. But yeah. So a lot of stuff that would bore them would like hit me in the right spot.
Now there's when you say super technical, I can think of I know the specific type that you're talking about, but there's also people who are into. Have you encountered the music type who is into the gear and the recording process more so than the music itself?
I don't like those guys. I don't really.
Here's the thing. I don't think that it's a mistake to be in music for the technical interest. I think that music theory is interesting, and you know how can I subdivide these beats? Percussionists a lot of the time are into the technical aspect. But there's I know a couple people, and I have one person in particular in mind who they're so into the editing, the production process, the editing after the fact, and people usually, when it comes to alternative music, like bands that gig around and stuff, people who have a lot of pedal boards, people who have large pedal boards, you know what I'm talking
about?
I know exactly. Guitarists and bassists, those you can spot them by their huge, ridiculous pedal boards, and they've sunk so much money and time and effort into figuring out these different timbres for their guitar, that it's like, first of all, an audience is not going to pick up on the difference of some of these pedals that they use, and that's not the fault of the audience. It's just because there's such a subtle difference that these hypersensitive types, like, no, this is like a Roland SV20. That's totally different from the, and it's the same like you're hearing the same distortion, but this guy who's obsessed, and I don't know, that like I think that some people I do think that some people are into music for the wrong reasons, like. Yeah, if that makes sense. I know that sounds really judgmental. No, that's definitely. I mean, production is sort of It's a craft. It's its own craft.
It's definitely its own craft.
I respect people who are good at it. Yeah. Like, even like Deadmau5. Like, if you watch some of his videos on YouTube, and I like people like him who don't try to hide away that's what they're doing. Right. It's like, all right, you know, I'm in it for the production. Like he's obviously like a multimillionaire. He has like a studio in his house that's like built for ultimate acoustic capability. He has like a Dolby. He has like a movie editor's stereo setup in his room, and he has a giant. It's called a modal synthesizer. I think it's a bunch of different synths that he built into the wall. It looks like a retro space station, and he's really he's sort of unafraid of the fact that he's just into the technical side of music, and like some
Which
of
is good, yeah.
Yeah, some of his songs are fun and interesting. They're not, they're not compositional masterpieces. Right. None of them are. They're not. But he's. I don't know. I can respect that. That's what he's aiming at, and that's what he's in music for. Just I guess because he embraces it.
But for me, there's no question that it's kind of bad that these days, at least what I've seen, is that. People who at least are only music listeners really do hear production as the music, and I think that is objectively a bad thing. And I teach like kids piano and vocals or whatever. That's my job, my part-time job, and I can tell that a lot of the times the kids will do exactly that. They'll associate the quality of the recording with how good the music is.
Right.
And it's sad. Like when they hear a really crisp bass drum, like, oh, that's good music. And it's like, no, it's really not good at all. There should be sort of they're all different aspects that come together to make something great, but production is just one smaller aspect of many, I would say. And the fact that it's at the forefront of just music in general these days, the music that people listen to on a regular and mass basis is not good.
And we had an interesting conversation with someone on Facebook about they thought that the act of composition, like the craft of composition and the craft of production, were like on a continuum. So like say orchestration. Like Maurice Ravel was a famous orchestrator. He orchestrated Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. Yeah. So by that I mean he set a piano piece to orchestra. He set a piano score to orchestra, and he assigned the different notes to different instruments of the orchestra. And that, like, what would you call that? Would you call that an act of composition? Or wow, a hummingbird. I don't know if you guys could hear that.
It went right.
It went right between. But yeah, would you? So the question was, would you call something like that an act of composition or an act of production? Because he technically wasn't writing the music; he was arranging the timbre and the color. And I think that what we settled on was that a good definition for like pure composition, like just the act of composition, totally apart from production, was the arrangement of notes in relation to one another over a set period of time.
Yeah,
that is what we mean by composition. So
right.
Just the pure theoretical arrangement of notes.
That's true.
That could be played by any given instrument.
Yeah.
So, like Bach has been set to a lot of different things. Moog synthesizers, choirs, recorders. But it's the same. It's the same piece of music, and I think that's what we mean by composition as distinct.
Yeah. There's an important difference between just a pure tone and then the instrument that creates that tone, whatever that is.
Right.
Because it's the same. You can have a C be played on any number of things, but it's still a C at the end of the day. It just depends on like what aesthetic and what sound you want.
Yeah. So I do think there is a sharp. I know it's like. I think it sounds smart to say all things are really on a continuum, but in this case they're not.
Yeah.
Like there is a sharp theoretical, like conceptual distinction between composition and production.
Oh
and
yeah.
And it can get muddied because usually those two things are not clearly defined professions or clearly defined crafts. Like usually the person who is writing the music, i.e. arranging the notes in relation to one another, is also deciding which instruments they're being played on. So when you think about it, it doesn't seem like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think they're all in their own thing. I mean, there is just basic composition, and then orchestration a lot of the times comes with composition.
Right.
Like a composer will have an idea of what he wants to play, or if down the road he wants to change that, he will do that. But at the end of the day, it's the same melody, it's the same whatever. Right. But then, in production is a new thing altogether. Historically, within the realm of music, it's definitely still a new addition and a new idea about the whole thing.
Post-production certainly.
Post-production,
right?
yeah.
Since the advent of recording.
Right, yeah. That's what I mean, recording.
Yeah. Because you could technically consider like the construction of a concert hall for certain acoustic purposes.
That's true, yeah.
Part of the production, point. Yeah.
It's interesting to see what people's ideas are of music, and then to look and see how into music they are themselves and how much they actually know about it. Because a lot of this stuff, I think the guys that were in that post that we were referring to were sort of coming from the outside in. At least that's the sense that I got.
No, you were right about that, actually.
Yeah. But so, going back to the original thing with, like, there's people who are, like, the technical side. I've also found that affects how well you play live, and that's a whole other field. But like both Max and at least I'm not good at it. I'm sort of scared of it. And then again, a lot of the jazz musicians, like, they love it. That's all they do. They're doing it constantly.
Playing live,
yeah.
Oh, you do it pretty frequently. You're pretty good
I'm
at
trying
it.
to do it frequently because I'm trying to, like, force myself to do it more. But and the thing that, like, dawned on me the other day was that I mean, that's just it. It has everything to do with why you're in music, and for jazz musicians it is a very technical and, like, sort of show off genre. I mean, they go up there and they're excited because they're like, hey, look how fast I can play this super low-key scale or whatever they're doing, which is cool, and that definitely takes a lot of practice.
It's like the technical theory and the performance aspect takes center stage in jazz. Is that? Yes. Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And so that's why they love going up there and they love doing that, because it's all about how much is there that I can do with this one piece of music?
Yeah,
Whereas-
how far can I stay?
Yeah. Where for me, like I'm not as concerned with look how flashy this can be. I'm concerned with how strongly does this express what I'm trying to get across to you.
Totally.
And then the only way I can think of it, and this might sound like melodramatic, but I think that's why I'm scared of playing live. Like I wouldn't want to cry in front of a bunch of people.
Oh,
you know what I
that
mean?
makes sense. Yeah.
And since all I'm doing is like sort of trying to express myself into this music, it's weird to like put myself in this box around all these people and like try to do that effectively.
I think, I mean, I think I'm adjacent to what you're trying to do with music.
Yeah.
With me, it's a lot. It is about that expressive thing, but it's normally it's a sort of when I make music, it's sort of a selfish thing. Like I have something in my head, and I really want the final product to sound as close to that as possible. It's usually with me, it's not. It's hardly ever like emotional a feeling I get. It's more just like a distinct. I like get an idea for an orchestral piece. I don't know if you guys have listened to some of the stuff on my SoundCloud. Then you'll know what I'm have some idea of what I'm talking about. Like I'll have an idea. I'll wake up usually, and in the morning I'll have an idea in my head for an orchestral thing.
Yeah.
And I'll try very hard to like bend the music to my will and make it sound like that. And so that's why I don't like the performance aspect, is because it's just a waste of time if that's what I want to accomplish.
True, yeah.
So
you want to get it one specific way.
Yeah, like all I need, like for what I want to do, all I need is like some good equipment, basic good equipment. I don't need like the most perfect stuff. Just like good MIDI orchestra samples and a lot of time alone, I guess.
Yeah.
Just to make it sound right.
Yeah.
And good technical mastery over the equipment that I'm using, the software
totally,
that I'm using. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, yeah, and that's a good thing you brought that up, because I feel like a lot of our viewers see me as like the musician, but Max is an incredible musician, and Max is a great orchestrator.
Oh, thank you.
He's really good at orchestration. Just like you're good at hearing it, because he obviously listens to a lot of music, listens to a lot of classical stuff, and he can hear exactly what's going on very well. And it's way better than me. And it's funny because I went to college for a year for composition, and like I learned quite a bit about orchestration. It was good for me. But one thing I realized coming back is that Max's orchestration was stronger than any of my colleagues. And he hasn't taken like a single class.
Well, thank you. I can't totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like to be perfectly clear, I get a lot of my it's gonna sound retarded.
That's okay.
I get a lot of my orchestration ideas from Fintroll and Grant Kirkhope's music from Donkey Kong 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. That's it. So like you're gonna hear a lot of brass, a lot of like zany percussion, like xylophone and like alternative yet at the same time traditional orchestral percussion, like anvil and just crap. I guess look, I feel like I'm good at orchestration within a very limited, like within a very narrow scope.
Yeah, you have a sound you're going for, but that sound is like perfected.
Oh well, thank you.
A thing that you do that is tough to do for lots of people is sort of make a linear melody happen between multiple instruments. And that's something you're really good at.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I took a lot of time thinking about that, actually.
And that's hard to do. And this is also going to sound dumb, but that's why me and Max are both huge fans of the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack.
It's so good.
He's incredible at that. The orchestration in that is like
guys, go listen to. I don't know. Just go listen. I'm not going to put a link in the description.
Yeah.
Just like YouTube it. You're on YouTube right now, so just look up. The How to Train Your Dragon OST. The second one.
Yeah, the second one in particular.
Oh my
it's like
God.
the opening track is amazing on its own, but they're all. Oh my God.
That is really good. We listen to a lot of. We both listen to a lot of Emmett more so than me. We listen to a lot of video game and film music.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's such a good. Oh, that's such a good score.
Mm-hmm. But so that's interesting. I mean, we were just talking about the difference between like pure composition and then orchestration as separate things. And I think for me, definitely the main focus is just the composition itself. Orchestration is kind of an afterthought, and I've been getting a little bit better at it, I think. But even so, I mean, my stuff is pretty basic. And then I feel like that's almost your main focus.
Orchestration.
How best do I orchestrate this?
Yeah, totally. Like a lot of my melodies are pretty simple. And like I don't try to do. Emmett has really rich chord structures, which is like something I really value in music. Like unexpected, rich chord structures. I feel like there's a lot of internal chromaticism.
Yeah.
Like you'll have notes going down in each subsequent chord.
Yeah.
Chromatically.
Right.
I sometimes hear that in your music. So he has really rich chord structures. He mainly sticks to piano. He's a better he's a better pianist than me, like a better performer than me. But I guess like for me, like the traditional orchestra and orchestrating something is really important because I guess I like the color.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the auditory color that it gives, and I think it's I don't know. It's just how I choose to focus on music, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's just what I'm good at naturally, without having to force myself.
Even again, orchestration can definitely help you more successfully express your composition. So that's something for me to look into as well. But then, I feel like recording takes a place above all of that.
Right.
There is
in modern music.
Yeah, in modern music, yeah. There are definitely there's separate levels. There's like the notes, and then there's how the notes happen, which would be orchestration, and then there is, sort of putting the bow around it, which would be getting a nice recording.
Right.
But they're all on separate planes, I think. At the end of the day, I don't know. I want to be nice and say they're all equally important, but
they're not.
They're not. Like you can't build a house without a good foundation, and that is composition.
Yeah.
And then orchestration would be like making it look good. And then recording would be like making sure it's not in a ghetto neighborhood. Or something.
Making sure it's presented well.
Yeah.
Making sure it's not in a ghetto. All of a sudden we're in this neighborhood analogy, I guess. The last step.
Yeah.
You could use the analogy of food. So the right ingredients, well, it's more difficult actually. What are the ingredients? Is that the instruments? No, because that's the notes, because the ingredients is the foundation. Never mind. I don't want to go down this road.
Yeah.
Anyway, the production is how it's presented on the plate.
Yeah.
Okay, it can look beautiful, it can look tasty, and then you take a bite of it and it's like it's raw chicken on the inside or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's good production, bad composition.
Then again, our friend Brandon, guitar man, he I was talking to him once a while ago, and he made the good point of saying that specifically classical music he called it musician's music, and it can really only be fully appreciated by people that know exactly what's going on or can hear what's going on. For someone who's not really in music, it might be nice, but you don't really appreciate the chord changes and the orchestration and all that because you don't know what's happening. And that's totally fine. But I think that's why production is so popular, because it's something you can hear without having to understand what's happening. And so, that's totally fine. I get that not everyone's going to be a music major. But, I don't know. It admittedly makes me a little sad.
At the same time, like, a good piece of classical music should be, you're right that someone who's studied it, and this goes with anything, right? So someone who's studied that is going to better appreciate it. Mm-hmm. But with a good piece of classical music, I think, and this is where I part ways with the 20th century sort of 12-tone people, is that I think a good piece of classical music should also just be immediately intuitively good to people who don't know anything about it. So like a Wagner opera or a Bach, something out of the Well-Tempered Clavier is like usually really obviously good to people who haven't studied technical music. At the same time, people who have studied the technical parts of music are more invested and more interested.
Definitely, yeah.
So
I think when you know that there's a great work of art in general, it is something that touches everyone on a pretty high level. Like some of those classical pieces that are kind of overblown but still incredible, like the Toile Gymnopédie,
Eric Satie,
and the Moonlight Sonata, and Adagio for strings, Samuel Barber. Those are all just incredible pieces of music, obviously, and they sort of teeter between being technically impressive and then just emotionally masterful.
Yeah, they do.
Sort of,
I never realized that about those. It's there's sort of a, I don't want to cheapen it by saying a pop element, but there is a pop element to like the Ode to Joy, for Christ's sake. It sounds like the
it's a very catchy melody. Yeah,
it could be a modern pop song, like the melody could be, but at the same time, there's all this wonderful, rich chord changes going on underneath the surface of that one-note melody and everything.
And that takes a large degree of knowing exactly what you're doing and years of practice. But then, things like catchy or strong melodies don't necessarily need that. There's a lot of people that don't know much about music that just have a good sense of melody in general.
Yeah, totally.
But then to make those things really fleshed out and great, then you need to know what you're doing. So, there's sort of two aspects there, two sides of the coin.
And knowing what you're doing is an interesting. In music, it's harder to pinpoint what that really means. Take someone like Paul Simon, who couldn't read music while he was composing things like, if you listen to, have you heard So Long Frank Lloyd Wright? Really well composed, right? Like, it's something that it sounds like to someone who's like studied music, it sounds like a piece that someone else who has studied music has written.
Yeah.
And it just sounds so masterful, and like the chord changes are rich.
Yeah.
But Paul Simon couldn't read music.
Right.
So there's you don't. I don't know. It's hard to tell what that talent comprises of in classical music writing.
There's this sounds kind of like hippie, but there is something to figuring it out on your own and just doing it on your own. A lot of the stuff I wrote in high school, like the Worlds for Throng piano concerto thing, and Justice, which was that like thing I did with Andre and Christian and Harrison. Those are all like I didn't. The thing is, like, I knew what I was doing, and I know you know what you're doing too when we sit down to write something. But I didn't necessarily know like what everything was called or the rules about how to get there. But that's what made it good. Like we listen to a lot and we play a lot, and then we can make it happen, and we can approach it without any learned restrictions.
Yeah.
And it's weird looking back on those things because I don't want to like toot my own horn, but they're really good, and I didn't like.
They are.
I know,
they are.
yeah. And these days, I could never write something like that anymore because I've been taking theory for so long, and then there's like a specific way for things to happen, and that like I had no idea about any of that when I was in high school, so I just went in.
It's sort of. I think that learning. When you say learned restrictions, that really resonated with me because I think there is something to the. Learning the technicalities of everything it makes you second guess yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you used to have like it and. To be unrestrained and just like emotional and just like play something whatever comes to you, and it can turn out like total crap.
Yeah.
But it can turn out like really really good.
Right.
And when you learn the technical parts of music, and like when you learn music theory and everything, and it kind of stops you from just letting it all out.
Yeah. And it's weird because there's a lot of things that I was aware of before taking theory class that I now just simply know the name of and like how to accurately make it happen. Like, we'll do a chapter on whatever, like alternate dominant chords or something very technical sounding. And it's a thing where I'll be like, oh yeah, I accidentally like figured that out and started using it on my own. Now I know that it's called an alternate dominant. And
before it was just a feeling
right.
that you associated something with, and now it's a technical term.
Yeah. So there's a lot of just like, learning definitions and learning the proper way to do things. And that's not bullshit. I mean, there is classical voice leading, which is, learning where to put what notes, when and stuff, is tied up with like the science, the physics of acoustics. And I don't want to get into that because that's a big thing.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I remember when I was first taking theory, I was real pissed because like I didn't agree. I stormed out a couple of times because I totally like I was.
You left the class?
Yeah, I left the class. But what was
this at U of A?
This was just at SEC actually.
Oh.
But what was funny is that I remember a lot of the times when I was.
Sorry, there was like a recording hiccup there.
Yeah, I remember there was almost a correlation between when I was severely disagreeing something that was being taught to me, and then subsequently creating like a really great piece of music. So there's something to that. Getting challenged by something and then sort of almost running in the other direction. So I don't know. I mean, the learning process is weird, and it sort of manipulates you. But it's not necessarily. It's not bad. It's definitely changed the way I look at a lot of things. And I think in the long run it's good because there is, it's grounded in something significant and something tried and true. But yeah, there is a lot of great stuff that I feel like has been washed away by people that could potentially just figure it out all on their own.
Totally.
Yeah.
I already mentioned Mussorgsky, but he didn't have any classical training, did he?
Oh, no, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that was incredible. I mean, Pictures in Exhibition is like something that, like a learned music theorist graduate student would love to and probably couldn't write. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's true.
And one thing I want to mention is maybe, do you think that You're still in the. I mean, you're at the very advanced stages of learning music theory.
Yeah.
But still, do you think that being in the learning stages, not having mastered the theory, is why it's sort of holding you back? And maybe when you come out the other end of music theory, that might not hold you back as much, and it might just be illuminating instead of just restrictive.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that. I mean, I feel like since I'm still like I need to do well on tests and I'm doing homework and stuff. I have to like stay in that sort of mindset. But once I'm free and I do have that knowledge, and I think
once that knowledge is second nature, it might not be as restrictive.
Right, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so yeah, I think there needs to be an equality between all the technical aspects that make it come together, and then between just you doing what you need to do and what you feel you can bring to the table. Because I've heard compositions. There's a lot of on the classical radio station here. There's a lot of really boring stuff, and I call it obligatory Baroque because
Arcangelo Corelli. Man,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, and there is a lot of good Arcangelo Corelli music out there, but it's like become a joke, right?
Right.
When the local radio station, and I feel like we're very fortunate because not a lot of cities have local radio stations.
Yeah.
It's something like less than 10 in the United
wow,
States
really?
have publicly funded local classical music radio stations. And we're one of them. And they keep playing this fucking guy, this Italian, and now Arcangelo Corelli, and you know it's going to be like really predictable string and harpsichord crap.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of it you can just tell it was some guy that was like asked to write a piece for the King's Ball
for a nobleman who commissioned him.
Yeah. And so it is just that. Like, when you listen to it, it's all put together very well, very masterfully, and I can appreciate that to a degree. Like, hey, he did everything right. He did all the voice leadings right, and the orchestration's good. Blah blah blah. But
at the end of the day, man,
it's uninspired.
Yeah,
just straight up boring stuff.
Uninspired is a good word for it.
So yeah, and I don't want to be seen as one of those guys that thinks all classical music is great, because it's not.
Totally.
There is. It's weird because there is definitely. Again, it's an objectively correct writing style tied in with classical music. And, Bach and everyone before him sort of figured that out. They learned how certain chords should be put together and where they should go and what way. And it all has to do with, like, consonance and dissonance.
Yeah. And they took it really seriously in a way that we've kind of lost. Bach actually walked for 100 miles. To study with this Danish Baroque composer, just so he could learn like counterpoint from him or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
which is like a theoretical theoretical thing in composition that would be completely lost. No one would be able to pick it out.
Yeah, So that's kind of the thing that bums me out, is because there is a very important underlying aspect of classical music, which is just that. But you still, at the end of the day, music is still an art form. So if it is sort of uninspired or whatever, then it can just be just as bad as anything else you hear. But I hope that the writing style and all those rules aren't lost completely, because everything you hear is still based off of like what Bach came up with. The 1-4-5 chord change and everything. That's Bach.
Bach came up with 1-4-5.
Well, no, but he really made it popular. He made it like a very strong and sort of essential thing.
He popularized equal temperament. Right?
Yeah.
Like the way that the modern piano was laid out and tuned.
Yes, yeah.
It was J.S. Bach.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the one that I would say would popularize that sort of hierarchy of chords.
Right.
That we use all the time now, and that's a basic thing, and we sort of take it for granted, but it didn't used to be, And I don't know. It's interesting. That's all I have to say, really.
That's all he's got to say. That's all I've got to say. Next time on Anarcho Sagas. What is the difference between an art and a craft? No, I'm not going to get that like high-minded. I honestly don't think. What's his name? Orwell? Or not Orwell. Orson Welles.
Orson Welles. Yeah.
I'm gonna put that clip in here. God, that's so good.
Home is home.
The French.
The French.
But yeah, I guess that's all we got to say for now about music. If something else comes up,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do a part 2 on this.
If I just rambled a lot. This was literally completely spontaneous.
Yeah,
we just
totally.
decided to do this like 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes before recording.
5 minutes before recording.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you disagree or agree, let us know in the comments.
Unsubscribe.
Unsubscribe.
No, don't. Please dislike it and let me know why.
Please dislike it. Let me know why. Yeah. Now we gotta go film a Let's Play.
All right. Thank you guys for watching.